Welcome to this lesson on subtracting decimals. Please make sure you have these notes in front of you so we can begin our lesson. And my students, let's make sure we update our table of contents. The learning objective for this lesson says I can fluently subtract multi-digit decimals. So let's go ahead and talk about some of the vocabulary words for this lesson. The first vocabulary word is to annex zeros. And annexing zeros means to add zeros behind or in front of numbers. So for example, if I had the number 10, I can annex zeros by placing a decimal right behind it and placing as many zeros behind it. Or if I had the number 10, you can place zeros in front. And by doing that, you do not change the value of the number. This number right here is still worth 10. This number right here is still worth 10. They look different because I annexed the zeros, but the value does not change. The second vocabulary word is called difference. And difference is the answer to a subtraction problem. So let's move over to the key concepts. We are going to talk about subtracting decimals. So in order to subtract decimals, we need to line up decimal points. Then subtract digits in the same place value positions. Be sure to place the larger value on top when you're subtracting. And finally, annex zeros for your problem. So if I was given these two sets of numbers, what I would do is make sure the bigger number or the larger value is on top, which is the blue numbers. And then I want to make sure I line up my decimals. So I wouldn't want to line up my numbers like this because the decimals are not lined up. So what I have to do is make sure the decimals are standing right on top of each other. What I can do is I can start to annex zeros. So let's annex zeros on there, let's annex zeros here. And then I can start to subtract. So let's use these key concepts to discuss the following examples. So for example 1, it says find the difference of 5 and 774 thousandths and 2 and 371 thousandths. So I'm going to underline the word difference because that means to subtract. And let's go ahead and estimate our answers. If I take the decimal 5 and 774 thousandths, I'm going to look at that number and in terms of money, it looks like $5.77. $5.77 is close to $6. And then let's take the other decimal of 2 and 371 thousandths. And that is approximately close to, if I look at that as money, that's $2.37, and that's close to $2. If I add subtract those two, since difference means to subtract, 6 minus 2 is 4. So our answer should be close to 4. So now let's spend some time finding the precise answer. In each box on the grid, what I want to write is a digit of each of the numbers. So 5 and 774 would go on top. It's the larger value. And I'm going to subtract 2 and 371 thousandths. Notice how my decimal places are lined up. In this case, I don't have to annex zeros. So what I can do is just start subtracting each column. 4 minus 1 is 3. 7 minus 7 is 0. 7 minus 3 is 4. And 5 minus 2 is 3. So notice we've got a large number. We've got 3,403. That is nowhere near our estimation of 4. So we know our answer is not correct yet. What we need to do is we need to make sure we drop down the decimal right below. So now our answer, or our precise answer, is 3 and 403 thousandths. That answer is much closer to our estimate of 0, so we know our answer is reasonable. So pause the video and complete these got it problems, and we'll discuss the answers in class tomorrow. Notice I have two got it problems in this slide, got it problem A and got it problem B. Alright, for example 2, it says find 6 minus 4 and 78 hundredths. First thing I want to do is let's go ahead and estimate. So our whole number of 6, that is approximately close to 6. $6 is close to $6. And let's estimate our other decimal, which is $4.78, which in money world is close to $5. So if I subtract these two values, 6 minus 5 becomes 1. And my answer is approximately close to 1. It's not equal to 1, but it's close to it. Alright, so let's go ahead and subtract this so we can find the precise answer. I'm going to write 6 in the grid, put a decimal, because that's how we make a whole number look like a decimal. And then right below it, I'm going to subtract 4 and 78 hundredths. Notice how I lined up the decimals Now we can subtract. Actually, before we do that, we have to make sure we annex some zeros. So I'm going to place a 0 here. I'm going to place another 0 here. By doing that, we do not change the value of 6. 6 is still the same thing as 6.00. So now that everything's nicely lined up, we can now begin the subtraction process. 0 minus 8 in this first column, we can't subtract because we need to borrow. You can't take anything away from it. Let's look at the next column. You can't borrow anything from there either. So I'm going to borrow from the 6. The 6 becomes a 5. And the 0 in the middle column becomes a 10. So if I borrow from that, that becomes a 9. And now this last column becomes a 10. So 10 minus 8 becomes 2. Middle column, 9 minus 7 is 2. And 5 minus 1 is 4. Notice that 122 is not close to our estimate of 1, which means our answer cannot be 122. What we have to do is we have to make sure we drop down our decimal. So our precise answer becomes 1 and 22 hundredths. Now our answer is much closer to 0, which means it is much more reasonable. For example 3, it says find 23 minus 4 and 216 thousandths. Once again, let's start by estimating. So 23 whole dollars will be close to 23 whole dollars. And then let's go ahead and take 4 and 216 thousandths, and that is approximately close. If we look at that as money, $4.21, it's close to $4. So if I subtract that, 23 minus 4 gets 19. So my answer is not going to be equal to 19. It's going to be close to 19. So now let's go ahead and figure out the precise answer. What I want to do is I want to stack the 23 on top because it's the larger number. And now I'm going to annex some zeros. And now let's go ahead and line up some of the decimals for our decimals, the and 216 thousandths. So now let's subtract. We can't take away 0 from 6, so we have to continue to borrow, but we can't take away from any of these place values, so let's go ahead and go to the 3. That becomes a 2, and this becomes a 10. But if we look to the position to the right side of it, we're going to have to borrow again, so that becomes a 9, and then this becomes a 10. But then if we look at the place value to the right of it, we have to borrow again, so this becomes a 9, and this becomes a 10. So now we can subtract. 10 minus 6 is 4. 9 minus 1 is 8. 9 minus 2 is 7. Drop down our decimal. 2 minus 4, we can't do that, so let's borrow. That becomes a 1, and this becomes a 12. 12 minus 4 is 8, and let's drop down the 1. So our precise answer is 18 and 784 thousandths. Notice that that is very close to our estimate of 19. So pause the video, complete this guided problem, and we'll discuss the answer in class tomorrow. So now that we've completed this lesson, go ahead and self-rate yourself and let us know how you feel. If there's any part of this video that you do not understand, please go back and watch it again. Also come to class with some questions so we can discuss it in further detail.